Hey guys, it's Janice. I'd love to invite you to join me on my school community. That's SKOOL. Rebel Rising is a community of women who've been through it, are in it, and are ready to rise. So come join us for the weekly prompts, the private pods, and real support. Now, back to the show. Coming up on this episode of Media Rebel Unplugged.
I got on the apps and I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about.
It's so bad.
So after, yes.
Do you recommend people that you're working with?
I do. I think, we make a list of what we're looking for a job or when we're looking for a house or a car. Why would we go into the most important relationship without being super intentional about what are we looking for?
Tell me what it was like for you when you were going through this part of your marriage and it starts to unravel and you have to show up every day as a professor.
I had to keep my professional life together so that I could support myself and my boys. I think I recognized how difficult it was afterward.
Welcome back to Media Rebel Unplugged. I'm Janice. Today we're talking about what no one prepares leaders for. How to keep showing up at work when your personal life is quietly unraveling. Joining me today is Dr. Merideth Thompson, Professor of Management at Utah State University and founder of Partner Lab. Welcome to the show, Merideth.
Thank you so much, Janice. I'm super excited to be here and talk about this topic that touches all of us.
I'm so excited to have you here. It is something very relevant with our female leaders and the day-to-day that we have to go through. Before we jump in, I'd like to hear a little more about your story and what led you into what you're doing now with Partner Lab.
My story is about 20 years in the making at this point. So I got married actually in college, not even straight out of college, in college, and stayed in that marriage at least 10 to 12 years too long. And even though I'm a researcher, I do work-life research, and frankly, I'm not sure if I wasn't aware of what the relationship science said about relationships, or I kind of instinctively knew, but just kind of avoided looking at it because I didn't want it to tell me what I think my body already knew, which was that was not a safe relationship. And so it took me many years to finally get the clarity to go, okay, I'd been staying for my children because I was raised in a high demand religion, and that's what you're supposed to do if you want to be a good mom. And I really wanted to be a good mom. And it was actually my children realizing the impact the relationship was having on them. Like I had a moment in what I now call my former stupidly big house, standing in the kitchen and just having had an interaction with my then spouse. And I thought, oh my gosh, my boys are learning that it's either okay to treat their partner this way or it's okay for their partner to treat them this way. And that was really like the tipping point that kind of led me down that path. And then a few years after I divorced, I was in the car and I was listening to a podcast. And frankly, I cannot tell you which one it was, but I just had this moment of like, I have access to the research and can interpret it because I call it pointy-headed academic research. It's not written for the masses. It's written for other pointy-headed academics. And so just realizing that I could take what I have access to because I can get behind the paywalls because I'm a professor. I have the knowledge to read it and go, okay, here's what that means in like real people language. And that's how I started Partner Lab, was just recognizing I could take my background from being a techie years ago at Deloitte, being able to read academic research and translate it, and then taking lived experience and understanding like what do people need to get clarity in their relationships? Because I wished I'd had it 10 or 12 years before, because those are years you can't get back. And the older we get, I think the more impactful those years are. And so that's kind of how I came to start developing Partner Lab.
Wow, that's quite a journey. And you made up so many great points within what you just said. And I think it's something that I even saw recently in a new study that had come out about how more divorces are being decided upon based on the environment that the children are being raised in and how healthy it is for them. Whereas, like you said, we would stay in marriages because that's what we were taught to do. Your religious background can really play a huge impact in that. My first divorce, I went through something very similar. It was, I don't want to get divorced. My parents are still married to this day, but looking at, they didn't have a toxic marriage. And the one that I was in was really unhealthy. I was married to an alcoholic who became a drug addict, and I didn't want to raise my children in that environment. But it wasn't an easy decision, by any means. And on the tail end of that, not only are we making those decisions because, we have our children impacted, but now it's, okay, well, can I make a living on my own? Now I'm going to have a single. And now how am I going to balance being a single parent and showing up every day as a leader while now I'm going through this really hard thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say I was fortunate, and it was kind of by design. In my first marriage, I was the primary breadwinner. And I was that because after my parents divorced, my mom really struggled to make ends meet. When I was a senior in high school, our house was in foreclosure because she couldn't make the mortgage payments. And she leaned on me a lot as a confidant early on. And by the time I hit college, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to put myself in a situation where I can't stand on my own 2 feet. And even with that, I had the ability, the finances to leave, and it was still really hard to make that decision. I know for a long time I didn't make it because I didn't want to do to my boys kind of the way my parents had navigated their divorce. And it took me a while to realize I could do it differently. Truth be told, I didn't do it as well as I had hoped. Other things I would do differently, but hopefully I did it a bit better than my parents did. They tried their best, but it was the 80s. We didn't understand a lot of that stuff back then. So, yeah.
Well, and just like you're saying, you did your best, and that's all we can ever do. I think there are times that we can put our parents on a pedestal of sorts of how, that we forget they're human. And just as you are, when your children get older, I'm sure they're going to look back and just be thankful that you got them out of that situation, and for yourself too, to show that you have self-respect, and to get that clarity that you need. And then to take that painful experience and repurpose it the way that you have, and to put it in a layman's terms for everybody else not everybody can do that. That makes you quite special.
Well, I appreciate that. And I feel like it's important. It's giving what my lived experience meaning. And so that's a huge part of it. It's like, I don't want all that suffering and what I learned and how much I've grown and changed my life to be just for me. Yeah, the thought of getting to spread the information and outcomes far and wide just delights me to no end.
That's wonderful. Tell me what it was like for you when you were going through this part of your marriage and it starts to unravel and you still have to show up every day as a professor. What was that like going through that experience?
I don't think I realized what it was like when I was going through it, because I knew in part I had to keep my professional life together so that I could support myself and my boys. I think I recognized how difficult it was afterward, because there were a few days after my spouse at the time moved out of the house, and I was sitting at a red light in my car, and I realized I could breathe fully. And I hadn't done that in years and years and years, because just the pressure, the weight of the relationship and everything was off. So yes, figuring out, looking back, I can see how stressful it was. I think also for me, work was a welcome distraction. When I was going through the thick of the divorce process with a colleague, I wrote the most high prestige journal article that I've written in my career with a colleague. But it was like a place to kind of pour that energy and just to give my brain a break from what was going on. So I've put one foot in front of the other. My ex-spouse and I still work in the same department at the university. And so that, all that kind of continues on. I saw work as a way to give my brain a break from everything else that was going on.
That's a very good point, because work can become a distraction for you. And a lot of women do that. We just dive in and do everything fully focused on this thing over here. This project makes me feel so much better, because then I'm not sitting here and focusing on the pain of what's going through. I believe that we need to sit sometimes with that pain and that discomfort to truly come through it and heal through that.
I agree. Yes, in the months leading up to me finally making that decision, there's a canyon near where we lived that is very windy. It goes up mountains. It is stunningly beautiful. And I, a number of times, would get in my car and roll the windows down and drive up that canyon with music blaring and just think and decompress.
Yeah, music can be very healing. Taking a drive, just getting out, fresh air, just kind of seeing like all the other pieces of life, I feel like can be just a therapeutic experience.
I think too, for a lot of people, being outside or in nature helps because it helps your brain kind of remember that the world is just unbelievably expansive. There are many opportunities out there, and that I think it gave me hope. Life is going to get better, and I would have lots more opportunities to drive that road all by myself whenever I wanted, after the divorce. And I got my freedom back. I feel like that's what divorce was. I got my peace and freedom back.
It sounds like you never had it. I mean, to get married in college, you never really had that. If you're helping your mother and then you go to college, you get like that little taste, probably just a short time of freedom. And then all of a sudden you're in the relationship that probably seems really good. And we can go into relationships not realizing how we're looking for comfort and support. And it's really not that.
Yeah, no. That's the other thing I did not realize when I was in it. These unhealthy relationships tend to be a slippery slope. Like if they treat us badly on a first date, we're like, hard pass.
Yeah.
That's something I didn't realize until I was out of it. And that actually became my mantra to myself, and sometimes still is. Like when I'm going through a rough time, with business or with something else, it's like I would tell myself, peace and freedom, peace and freedom. That's what I was working towards.
Yeah.
And it took me several years. My first spouse and I, we dated in high school. So we were high school sweethearts. And I didn't realize until several years out that, I do what now we know is quite common, is we gravitate towards the familiar or to certainty. And in many ways, the first time I married my mother, trying to like heal dysfunctional dynamics, trauma, whatever you want to call it. So 43 years old, I really had the opportunity to figure out who I was and what I wanted. And that stupidly big house that I lived in when I got divorced, I don't value that anymore. Like the peace and freedom is so much more important. Travel is so much more important. Yeah. So it's really getting divorced, at least for me, helped clarify what my values were and what was really important and what was just for show.
Yeah, it's not always the monetary gain and the things around you. Like you said, you can't put a price on freedom. And your state of mind is just, there's absolutely no amount of money to put on that. But also you don't really see when you're in situations. I myself have had toxic relationships. Actually, I just wrote a book about my experience that I had gone through as a survivor of domestic violence. And a lot of people will say, didn't he show signs? And it's funny how often I get asked that question. It's like, sure, he did show signs, but I didn't see them. If it's the first date, of course, if there's a red flag, we're out. But that's not usually how toxic relationships begin. They start off with you look wonderful and perfect and everything is great and they have the right responses. And then there's those little yellow flags like that people call that get put in. But normally it's once you're really tied and stuck in. So for me, it was once I moved into his house, everything then was flipped upside down. But everybody's experience is different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do think for a lot of people, it is that slippery slope or slowly boiling a frog. When I got out of, I didn't recognize I was in a relationship with super unhealthy dynamics until I was out of it, and then look back and there was like so many things that happened. Like I made most of the money, but I did not control it. And so it wasn't until after I got divorced that I got to figure out my own budget. And frankly, did not have a lot of self-trust at that point in that. It was something I really had to grow.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. It's Janice. I just wanted to pause and take a moment to share with you some exciting news. My memoir and workbook is available now on Amazon, and you can find it on rebelrisingwithin.com. Now, back to the show.
So when you were finally free, what did it take for you to be brave enough to get into the dating pool again And I love how I think you basically said you made your partner in a lab, essentially. Tell me about that.
I did. Frankly, it didn't take me very long. I cried for I think pretty much every day for a year before I finally called my first marriage quits. And so I grieved a lot, and I'd been in therapy a lot, and worked on a lot of things that would make me better prepared to choose a new partner. And I hadn't dated since high school. I was excited to kind of do it and see what it was like. And then I got on the apps and I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about.
It's so bad.
So after a few first dates, they were like, no, I recognized, I was like, okay, Meredith, what are you looking for? Like at first, I think I was just looking, it was interesting. It was novel. It was exciting because it was new and different. And then I started a list on my phone that still lives there to this day of, I think, like 19 or 20 things I was looking for. And it was things like, can take responsibility or be accountable for his part in a conflict, knows who he is, and holds on to that sense of self. Though it wasn't, a while back, there was the commentary about, women wanted a guy 6'5", blue eyes, finance bro, whatever. There wasn't anything on there that was, I guess, tangible. It was much more about who he was. And after a date, I'd go back to my list and go, okay, what do I think? And I really do think I made this partner in a lab. Actually, after we started dating, I added at least one or two more items to that list in case I needed that list again. So we learned later that we each treated dating like a research project. And so I think that really helped us. It sounds nerdy, it sounds unromantic, but dang it, it's just like I actually ended up paying alimony in my divorce because I made more, and it was easier, probably cheaper to pay alimony than go to court and fight it. And after I started dating and met my now partner, I was like, my gosh, I would have spent 10 grand a month to get out of that relationship so that I could be in this one. And so, yeah, it's invaluable, and it just takes some courage, to get to know someone again after you've been in a really unhealthy relationship. But my partner makes it easy.
I don't think there's anything wrong with creating a list of the partner that you want. In fact, I think that helps us hold ourselves accountable and not accepting things that, and we as women are so guilty of this, but they might become this version.
Yes.
So that's like the worst thing that we can tell ourselves. Do you recognize people that you're working with?
I do. I think, we make a list of what we're looking for, a job, or when we're looking for a house or a car. We have our list of like what we're looking for. Why in the world would we go into the most important relationship in our lives, the thing in our lives that has the biggest ripple effect, whether it's positive or negative, without thinking very critically and being super intentional about what are we looking for? Because I think a lot of people, and I think on the front end, I probably was, I knew I didn't want X, Y, or Z. I didn't want somebody who raised their voice at me or undermined or, all these things. But then like what we focus on tends to be what we gravitate towards too. And I will say there's one person I dated for a very short period of time that was, again, me kind of navigating towards the familiar. And that was one of the points at which I was like, okay, I have to figure out what I do want, not just avoiding what I don't want. So I absolutely do. And I'd say make that puppy as specific as you can, make it long, add things to it, take some things off, whatever it is, because most of my work as a researcher is about how our work and our family lives affect one another. And it's massive. And you can see it in my life. My career has taken off since my divorce. I did a TEDx talk. I started a coaching business, and now I started Partner Lab. And so we're not just making a decision about one certain area of our life. It has a ripple effect, and an effect even on our physical health. We're in a bad relationship, it literally takes time off our lives.
Yes. Yeah. And in my situation, it nearly almost took my life. So definitely selecting your partner is one of the most important things that you will ever do.
Absolutely. Yes. So yes, I'm a huge fan of making a list.
Love that.
For sure.
I was on your website for a little bit, and I would love for you to tell other people about what is available on there, because I feel like you have some really amazing assessments that they can start with and workbooks. So when somebody is going, and you can tell me the site in a minute, because I know it's I don't want to mess this up.
Sure.
But,
No worries.
but when they go onto the site, what should be the first thing that they start with?
I would start with what we call the Clarity 360. And so it is a deep dive into 24 relationship factors that are super indicative or predictive of relationship health and happiness. I will say I am so stoked because later this week, we will launch what we're calling our Stay Go assessment. So half of our users reach out and they're like, what I really want to know is, should I stay in this relationship or should I end it? So we've been furiously working to take relationship science and build a tool that gives them a very clear recommendation about whether they stay in the relationship, whether it's time to end the relationship, or whether there's some things that maybe could be worked on in the relationship to make it better. And there's a third option of stay with conditions, but getting very specific about what are those conditions. And there should be a time frame on them. Like, I think so many people, and maybe especially women, stay in relationships. Maybe they're not dating the potential, but now they're married to the potential. And it's like, well, if I do this, he'll do that. I was very much in that pattern. And so putting a time frame on it, like if things don't get better by X, within 90 days, then I need to take some steps, because we know that staying in indecision about our relationship costs us emotionally, physically, but also financially. And so those are two of the tools that I'm really excited about. We have a deeper one for people who are like, maybe have decided they want to end it, but like me, or maybe like you, they had kids and they're like, you don't want that regret. So I think of it as regret insurance, and that's the Clarity Circle. And it's a 7-workshop deep dive to help them figure out what's going well in the relationship, what's not, where they have influence. Again, I think a lot of women think they can shape the relationship, but we can't control our partner's behavior. And so it helps them get super clear about where they can influence things and where they don't have influence. So letting that go. So yes, we are super excited to offer the Stay Go assessment. That'll be out shortly.
That's awesome. I know several people off the top of my head right now who could benefit from taking that assessment, as I'm sure many others listening do. So where can they go to find that?
Our site is mypartnerlab.co, and the website, there is a section specifically for the Stay Go to help them understand what it is, what they'll get out of it, and hopefully the clarity that will come with that. That's our big thing, is focusing on getting clarity, because until we have clarity, we can't really make a decision about much of anything, but especially in our relationships.
Yeah, that's the absolute worst place to be, is when you're stuck in that limbo and it's always in the back of your mind. You're waiting for that shoe to drop feeling. I had a conversation with a friend the other day. She was like, oh, he's finally listening. He's finally acting like he wants us. He's finally seeing. And I'm like, ugh, I don't know if these are good statements.
Yes. Well, and sometimes it'll change for a little bit, but that we're looking for the lasting change. And that's one of the things we emphasize in the Stay With conditions, and the resources that we provide with it is, you're looking for change, but you're looking for lasting change, not change that just lasts a couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, because as you said, there's no freedom in that. You can't relax. Your shoulders aren't dropping. You're carrying around that weight with you.
Absolutely.
I think what you're doing is amazing. And I hope that somebody listening today finds value in it and will share it with a friend or a family member.
We build tools that we wish we had. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. Aside from your site, where else can people learn information with you if they want to connect with you directly?
LinkedIn. I've also got a professional website that's more focused on my work as a negotiation professor, and that's at merideththompson.com.
Awesome. We're going to include that information in our notes for our listeners that are tuning in today. And I just want to thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you. Right back at you, Janice. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that is listening today. If you found value in what you just heard, please share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.